Welcome to Mystical Messages. I am Hilary Harley, your podcast host. I am an astrologer and Reiki master. Mystical Messages is your podcast gateway to discover and learn about the realm beyond the veil, including all things intuitive, metaphysical, and the healing arts. Today, I am so delighted to have my very special guest, Carol Zahra Lee, join me to understand more about Sufi healing and her wellness practice as a wellness consultant. Carol combines all different types of modalities, including emotion and body codes, flower essences, prophetic cupping, and LED light therapy. Carol, thank you so much for joining me. It is such a joy and a pleasure to have you here.
You're welcome. Hello. Thanks for inviting me.
So before I get too far into the interview, I do want to just make sure people know how to contact you. It's Carol Zahra Lee. Your best contact is your email. It's CM as in Mary, EILEE at Comcast.net, or your cell phone, 617-721-5215. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. So it is just miraculous to have you here on the show because you really were at the outset of my awakening and healing journey many, many years ago. And I can't wait to dive in and explore and share what Sufism and your experience and journey with Sufi healing has been and how you share it with others. So my understanding is that Sufism, SUF as in Frank I, Sufism is the mystical branch of Islam. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So how did you first get involved in Sufi healing? I mean, for those who aren't familiar with you as a person, you're of Chinese descent. And so it's particularly interesting, I think, to anybody that knows you, because correct me if I'm wrong, but Islam is not the prevailing religion of Far East Asia, China. So how did you, as a Chinese American, come to learn about, be involved with, and then become really an extraordinary, and I don't use that word lightly, Sufi healer, Sufi practitioner?
Yeah, well, I know I felt called to come to this path. I'm a Sufi and I'm a Muslim, and I became a Sufi first. And then later I became a Muslim. I took the Shahada. And I'm like the only one in my family. And I found out years and years later, I have a distant cousin who happens to also be a Sufi.
Really?
Yeah, it's really funny. Like,
wow.
I met her through of someone who's hosting a healing circle at her home, and she invited this person, and I don't even know how she met her, but we got talking because we're both Lees, and usually like all Lees are related in China. So they were like, you're like a cousin, and we found out we actually are like
actual cousins.
Yeah, and we're both, there's different what they call tariqas or paths in Sufism, and she is on a Sufi path, but a slightly different one. So it was very fascinating. And in China, there are actually lots of, there's actually millions of Muslims. There's actually quite a large number of Muslims there. But here in the United States, I grew up in a family that didn't have any religious practices. They had customs where you did typical ancestor worship, where you honor your ancestors. And, a lot of it is based on sort of more cultural beliefs. And I think it was through a major illness that I started exploring I came, to, or was brought to the Sufi path. And I felt like all these things that I did in my life sort of led me there, or narrowed the path and got me there. Because it's, nothing is an accident, as they say.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that, the more I interview, I mean, my path certainly involved my healing practice and practice in astrology and, the different modalities that I use. Certainly the gateway was through illness, and a lot of healers, that's the gateway for them as well. So that was your experience.
Yeah. It's and actually I was always sick as a kid. My mother told me that my grandmother accidentally dropped me from her shoulder onto the floor when I was an infant, and it actually like damaged my I got really sick. I had a high fever, I was crying, and my mother didn't know why I was so sick. And actually I found out when I was older, I crunched my spine, and there was a chip of bone floating in my throat. So I used to be a sickly kid, and my mom used to always be giving me like medicinal soups and things to boost my immune system, because I was always a sick kid, and I had allergies. I had all sorts of things, and I was very sensitive to like, I had allergies to lots of things, but I would take in other people's energies and get sick. So I noticed that I was a very sensitive, kid, and I was, as an adult, I also, had that kind of experiences. If someone was upset or angry, then I would get sick sometimes, or feel their, whatever they're feeling.
So empathic illness.
Yeah, a lot of times. And, I also, I didn't realize until I was older, I would be very intuitive as a kid. So people would ask me questions, and I would just answer, because, I just answer people's questions, because people ask you a question, you answer. So after, I think I used to, adults realized that, I was very intuitive. So they asked me a lot of these questions. I thought, that's a very strange question, but, this is what I think. And so
that's it was wonderful. So like this little Buddha or Yoda inside.
Yeah, it was really funny.
Tiny package.
And my son, when he was my older son, that used to happen to him too. People used to tell him things, or he would know things when they would go to him, and he would tell them things too. It's very interesting. It's all, kids are very spiritual and understanding. But I think I used to be, I was always very interested in healing modalities. My mom was, did a lot of Chinese herbs and medicines just at home. And when I was working, I was a director of a nonprofit in Chinatown, building housing, low-income housing, and doing community organizing and planning.
Chinatown in Boston.
In Boston. And I used to work crazy hours, like 60, 80 hours a week. And I had one toddler, one baby.
Wow.
And I just was, I was overworking.
That's a recipe for burnout for sure.
Yep. Yeah, I burned out my physical body. So I didn't burn out my, but that was the beginning of, I got so sick. And during the time I was working there, I had a coworker who got very ill before I did. And I had met some of her healers, and I got introduced to someone who her name is Maxine Salima Adelstein. She was in Cambridge, and she used to do energy healing. And I used to send a lot of people to her, because I thought, well, she did this great. My friend, who's my coworker, got so much better so quickly because she was seeing these, different healers, and saw her. So eventually, I would send people there, and at one point I said, oh, I've never gone to see this person. I'm just going to go check her out. And when I went to do a healing with her, one of the questions I had was, it was really about my purpose. I couldn't decide what I wanted to do for work. I kept on going back between being a teacher or a lawyer, because I used to do legal services work too. And so I really was out of it, but I love both. I really like that kind of work. I'm doing one or the other. But every time I picked one, it just like, no, that's not it. I'll do the other. And then I said, no, that's not it. But when I did a healing with the Maxine, then during the healing, it came to me that I was supposed to be doing healing work. And when that came through, I was like so happy. And it was like, oh, I forgot. That's what I'm supposed to do. And I was like, this light bulb went off, and I was like, oh, that's it. And I really felt in my heart and my spirit, like that was it. And it was like, oh, I just forgot. So
Right.
so
Like
that's
as
what I,
children, we often know what our purpose is,
yep.
but life gets in
We
the
forget.
way
Gets in the
or
way. Yeah.
sidetracks us
Yeah.
and we forget. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So that was, I started, so she had said to me, oh, I usually don't do this, but I'd like to recommend you to this healing school that I went to. And at that time it was called the School of Energy Mastery. And it later became a Sufi university.
okay.
So I went to that school and I started there. And then eventually, I think the second year I was there, I got introduced to Sufism, which was
Mm-hmm.
in one of the classes. And I like that stuff so much better than the energy work. And so, but the school started slowly transforming, becoming to do that kind of work. And I had no idea. I didn't know anything about Sufism. I didn't know anything about Islam. I didn't know anything about I went to the school wanting to learn healing.
Mm-hmm.
And but when I, heard the small taste I got in the beginning, I was very drawn to it. Like
Mm-hmm.
it was something called the Fatiha, which, I did, you heard me do. And which is the beginning, is the first surah of the chapter of the Quran. And also it helps with um, anything you do, you're asking God, a higher power, to come through, to remove any obstacles in the way of success, of bringing in goodness, opening your heart to receive. And that was the first thing I learned. I don't even know how I learned it, but, I heard it in one of the classes. And they weren't even teaching it regularly, but I was very drawn to it. I heard it and
And
I
often,
memorized it.
yeah,
That's it.
often by osmosis when we're on the right path or the path that we're intended for,
Yeah.
we absorb things and it is so second nature. It's just part of the
Yeah.
direction we're called and it's so easy. And
Yeah.
that's one thing I really, it's so important to acknowledge and remind
Yeah.
people that it's really not supposed to be hard. We often
Exactly.
think the path
Yeah.
is supposed to be hard,
Yeah.
but that's what
Yeah.
you're exactly describing. It's like you already knew this in some
Yeah.
context.
Yeah. Yeah. It felt so, it did. Um, it felt like very familiar, like very healing. And I used to, my kids were very young then when I started going to healing school. And it was difficult because they used to get mad at their dad every time I went because they say, why did you let mom go? It's like, you should have tied her down and not let her go to go to California for healing school. But I learned that phrase. And I remember one time my youngest son, he was probably like 3, 4, and he's really sick with a fever. And I did that prayer with him and it broke his fever like immediately. And it was very
Wow.
fascinating to me because usually, like he was crying and crying and I, because he was sick and, all moms, they're going to like lie next to their child and try to soothe them. And I just started doing that prayer out of like, I was running, it's like a lullaby. It was just like, let me soothe him because I was trying all different ways to soothe him. And I kept on doing that. And then he was like, it broke his fever. And he used to
Wow.
really love that. He would call the other language song because he couldn't say Arabic, because he spoke English and he could understand some Chinese back then. But, I started, so when I was the last one in my class to actually embrace, it was a choice. You could become a Sufi or not. It wasn't like forced on anyone, but, I felt like really like this was home. Like this is familiar. This is like, it fit like a glove. And eventually I was reluctant to take what they call the promise or be initiated or accept that as Sufism because I was exposed to, like when I was younger, different people who try to like force things on you, like, or tell you their way is the best way and put down everybody.
Right.
And that just like didn't feel right to me. I just like wasn't interested. Like I don't, and at that point I never believed in God. I didn't know what that meant. My parents didn't, I didn't grow up with it. And, I think I used to hear my mom say things like, don't go to church because, all they want is your money, because they used to ask for tithing. And I didn't know what that meant because I never even went to church. So, so I was sort of afraid of like, okay, people will go to church or going to a church because I didn't really know what it meant.
Right.
But this felt so, the more I learned, and I just naturally, at one point, I think I took what they call, I took the Shahada, which is like a formal pledge to be Muslim, when Muslim means like to surrender. And that's, and it felt like, yeah, okay, I can do that. Didn't feel any, it didn't feel strange to me or feel like I shouldn't do it. I think there was I think they were talking about doing a Hajj, and I didn't even know what Hajj was, but it's like pilgrimage to Mecca that Muslims, like want to do or hope to do in their lifetime. And I said, I don't know what that is, but I want to go. And I said, I'll take that Shahada because I want to go to that someday, even though I don't know what it is. It just felt drawn to like, oh, I'll do it.
Right.
And so, it was really, sort of a leap of faith for all these things because I didn't really know, what it was, but it has really opened up all these many doors for me. It has helped me heal illnesses in my family. My children were very sick, and it help them get, better. For myself, my physical body, and other people, and so.
And how long ago was this? I mean, you've been practicing. I mean, I've known you for probably 12, 15 years.
Oh,
so
yeah.
How long ago was this that you've been started your practice?
I went to the healing school in, 1990. Yeah.
So a while.
1998, I think. 99.
So well over 20 years.
Yeah. I mean, I got very ill when I was, I sort of sidetracked a bit, but when I was working for the nonprofit, I ended up leaving the nonprofit because I got so sick because I was overworking. And that was like 1995. And then then I went to, what did I do in between? I think in between for a bit, I explored. And then, I did meet the Sufi. She wasn't a Sufi yet, but the person who was the healer, I had met her when I was sick. And then later, I started going to school, but I didn't go immediately.
Because I met you in 2007. And so my interaction with, just so everybody knows, my interaction with Carol, I met you at a mutual friend's house. And
a jewelry party, yeah.
Yes, Carol at the time was making extraordinary jewelry that had healing properties with a lot of different stones and crystals. But it was shortly thereafter, it was 2007, that I really needed and required your service. And you played a pivotal role. I had, just so everybody knows, I had two significant loved ones. My father and my sister passed within 18 months of each other. And I was also at the completion and publishing process for a book that I was writing. And I fell into a very deep depression for 4 months. And I had been going to your Sufi healing circles for some time before that, I would say for at least 6 months to a year. So in 2006. And when I fell into the depression in the fall of 2007, Carol played an incredibly pivotal role in my recovery. And so you must have been practicing for at least 5 or so years prior to our having met.
Yeah, I think I graduated from my healing school in like 2000 or 2001 or something. And I was doing the Sufi healing, either, sessions with individual sessions, but I also was designing the jewelry and just praying with the jewelry, and, things would happen to people who bought the jewelry and wore it. And that's actually how you and I met.
Good things.
Yeah, good things. Yes, good things. Because even with Hilary, it was really funny because we had a mutual friend, and Hilary was a guest at the jewelry party, and our mutual friend had shared. I think she was delivering your order to you, and she had told me that your sister had passed away. Yeah, and I had this. had this urge to like send you a card and send you a little angel, I don't know if you remember that,
Oh, I
but
do. I still
yeah,
have the angel.
yeah. And that was like, I thought, oh, this woman's going to think I'm such a weirdo. Like, I just met her and I'm sending her this gift and this card. And it's like, well, if she thinks I'm strange, she'll never see me again. So I'll just send it anyway and just tell her, sending her love. And, I'm so sorry about loss of her sister. And I felt compelled to send you this little angel on a bracelet or something like that.
It was a rose quartz bracelet, and the rose quartz, which please share with everybody what rose quartz, the meaning.
Yeah, rose quartz is for unconditional love.
Mm-hmm. And it really moved me. I mean, deeply, deeply moved me, because my sister's passing was most unexpected and very unfortunate in many respects. And so this bracelet and wonderful card that Carol sent me really touched me and showed that my sister Heather was still with me very much, and that she loved me unconditionally, as I will always unconditionally love her. So that just affirmed that I needed to connect more to Carol, actually, to you, and started going to, it was, I believe, monthly you had or I don't think it was.
I think it was like, I think I did it every other week or every week. I can't remember, every Sunday, maybe.
Right. It was on Sunday afternoons.
Yeah.
They were healing Sufi circles.
Yes.
That you had at a local facility.
It was a Montessori school. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I thought it was great that, I remember you saying that your sister's, one of her favorite symbols was an angel. So you knew that was really from your sister, like I was a conduit, for
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. It was crazy. Yeah. So, so can you just talk about why Sufism and your experience of the Sufi healing is such a rapid modality for the healing process? Because I know I tried a lot of different tools, and I think they all contributed to my healing. But once you gave me a set of Sufi prayers to practice at home on a daily basis, the depression that I sank into after the loss of my sister and father was so rapid. Can you talk about and speak to why that is?
Yeah. So, the particular Sufi path I'm on is with the Chatelet Sufis, and their focus is healing and community service. And Sufism is about, surrendering to the love. And what does that mean is, and why I was so drawn to this path, and why it's, I love it so much, and how I love how much it helps me and other people, is that, everyone needs love, and everyone needs this connection to love, and they seek it in all different ways. And, it doesn't matter the name of the higher power that the love connects us to. We all need this connection. And, really rang true for me that this particular path for me, it was very welcoming and opening to anybody and everybody. Like, it didn't matter if you were, what color you were, what previous religion you were, whether you
had been in jail.
You haven't been in jail, if you have addiction, if you dress this way or don't dress this way. I mean, it was so, I think also because this particular tariqa, we call Sufi, Chatelet Sufi order, came to the United States, the person who introduced it here, he was, even though he's from Jerusalem, he was very traditional in a lot of sense, but he was very welcoming, opening. Like, if you didn't have a head covering or a full, dressed a certain way, he still gave, was kind to you, so it was supportive, gave you prayers or welcomed you, and people I met were like that, and that just felt, who I was, because I just never just because you're there, so that, you weren't better or worse than me, and I'm not going to treat you, differently or worse because blah, blah, blah.
So not
And
judgmental
it's
or
definitely, not judgmental. It's very open and welcoming, but the piece about, the love that, and that, each person has to experience it themselves. Because I can tell you, in this cup is apple juice, have some, but it also it could look like honey, it could be, something else. It's like,
whiskey.
you have to, whiskey, you have to taste it to know what it is. And in this path, like, really welcomes and encourages people, like, I can tell you there is such thing as a God or such thing as a higher power, but you don't have to believe me, but test it, try it, see for yourself if it helps you or not, if it's real. And, I was an atheist for a super long time. And sometimes I laugh because I forget I was an atheist because I so believe in God, a higher power. Like, I call God, I refer to God as God or a higher power or Allah. That's the word that that I'll use often.
Right.
Because it's I just cannot imagine my life without this higher power, and how much it is part of my life, and how much all the healing work that I've done on myself and other people, that's always been the key. It's like when people are not balanced in their body, mind, and spirit, and most people are not connected to their spirit and on a level or are aware of it or nourishing it in a way that they need to, because in our society, in our lives, most of the time people don't focus on that. It's very focused on other things, and that's why so many people are imbalanced there or undernourished and suffering because they're not connected or allowed to connect or encouraged to connect and don't know how to. And that was the biggest piece for me, is like that really opened this door of understanding and healing for me personally, because it was it invited me to try. I didn't have to do it this way or else. And that was like the biggest thing. Like if someone told me I had to do this way or else I would not buy.
Yeah.
Even in my own family, like they're very superstitious with the cultural things, and I didn't believe it. I was like, no, that's not true. Or they didn't. There was a lot of racism, around me, in my family too. And my best friends were all different colors, and some of the things my mother used to say was totally crazy and racist. But I was like, no, that's not true. My friend is not X, X, and X, and that's why this path is I embraced so easily. And the word, I want to say, the word Allah. So all the different major religions and are the languages, language and sound sacred sound is important and is significant, where all the ancient languages, Aramaic, which is a language that Jesus Christ spoke, Sanskrit, which is what Buddhism is based on, Hebrew and Arabic, they're all, or the language is all sacred sounds. So the sound which is in all those languages, like the different names of God in Hebrew, has a like Elohim. Aramaic, Allahu, that's what Jesus Christ, he didn't call God. He didn't speak English, he
spoke Aramaic.
It's Allahu, and Allah is Allah in Arabic, and so it's the and Sanskrit is the there's an A, it sounds like an O, but it's actually it's a sound, and the actually opens the heart. And that's where you open the heart, you feel the love, you feel the connection to this higher power. And that is the most significant piece for me. It's like, this is, in my healing work, is connecting people to the higher power of their
soul, their soul and their spirit. And that is why you attribute the rapidity, the quickness,
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
speed of the healing because
Yeah.
of the sacred sound.
Well, sacred
And
sound and connection, like that's where I feel like I'm the conduit. I don't do anything except show up and ask for help,
mhm,
and it comes through. And also, if the person is willing to allow this higher power to connect to them, and they access it, and they continue. I mean, the people who heal the fastest that I notice I work with is that they're willing to go there.
right.
It's like, okay, is there, and sometimes people are super angry at, that God, a higher power, they like, but if they have this much of a crack, it's possible. And if they're willing to try, those are the ones, and they keep going, and that, developing their relationship with a higher power, whatever name they call it, something happens. And usually that's the fast track that I've seen.
The fast track, right?
Yeah,
The healing fast track. Well, so many thoughts are coming to me right now. And one of them has to do with Rumi, the poet, the Sufi poet. And he, a lot of people credit Leonard Cohen with where the crack is, the light comes in. And yet that's from a Rumi poem.
Yeah.
And it's exactly what you're saying. All you need is that little gateway, that little tiny crack, such as what you experienced with your own illness, where you get to the point that, okay, I surrender, I give up, I'm willing to try anything so that I am not so ill anymore or exhausted. And one of my favorite things that you said to me when I was working with you was surrender and surrender now.
Yeah. Yeah. That's still my favorite motto for myself. It's like, we suffer so much, and because we keep trying to do what we think think is best. And we keep doing we're not listening to whatever the higher power is telling us. And when we finally do, everything is great and easy and wonderful. And then we go, if I had listened sooner and done it,
and
I also that's where that motto comes from.
Yeah, it's so true. And I also want to emphasize that the higher power is within each of us. It's our soul. It's, it's to distinguish between the quote unquote capital I that you just named, and that thinks it knows better, whether you want to call it ego or whatever, or the darkness or the opponent or Satan. It doesn't matter. It's our soul is, we're each a piece of God within us and spirit, and that's what the connection needs to be restored. And also speak to remembrance, because this is one of the things that I most cherish about the Sufi healing practice is the Friday night prayers called remembrance, because we forget during the course of the week with so many activities, and we're so busy doing this, that, and the other. Yeah. And then Friday night. So can you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So remembrance can be done. Actually, it's a Sufi practice that's done daily, any time of the day. And it's actually typically encouraged to be practiced in the wee hours of the night, the last third of the night, where it's very sacred, like before dawn. It's like there's like an open window. And remembrance just is remembering God, remembering a higher power. And, it is like the soul is connected to this higher power, this oneness, this wholeness that is, and it's a vast, endless, loving, unconditionally present, merciful, compassionate resource and source for everyone. And so remembering that this is within us, this is available to us, this never leaves us, this is always there when we turn to it. And yes, remembering God, remembering Allah, remembering what the name, whatever name you call it, love, universe. We need that. It's nourishment. It's healing, and doing so every Friday night. Usually they call it zik, zik, remembering the name of God. And traditionally it's done on Thursday nights and Sunday nights. And I just happen to have it on Friday nights because that was, when we're hosting it, the people who were hosting it at their homes, that was the best night for them during the week because everyone's working and things like that. But typically, there's definitely like holy days, like Sunday is a very holy day for, I think the Christians, the Friday's Sabbath, for,
Jewish.
it's a holy day, for Jewish tradition too. So there's, but the intention was, spending time connecting and leaving the baggage behind, letting go of whatever burdens, whatever worries, whatever fears, whatever challenges, whatever, we, need help with. Just leave it at the gate, leave it at the door, and allow ourselves to surrender to the love, to this higher power, and to feel that, to feel cherished, to feel loved, to feel held, to feel safe, feel protected, to feel that,
so
we'll
beautiful.
be okay.
Yeah, no, it's so beautiful. Just the practice of remembering what is important, and that it just, the noise of the outside world, and just coming home to our beings. And the other thing I want to mention that you briefly touched on was the heart and the heart opening. And one of Rumi's poems that I came across when I was working with you was the Rumi phrase, "The heart keeps breaking until it remains open." And that touched me. And I keep that very close to my heart because, you go through certain challenges and you think, oh, why this again? Why me? And another big, whatever chore to wade through, challenge to sift through and get through. And so it goes hand in glove with the crack of light, if we can just and move into that and just allow, because the more we resist, it grows bigger and stronger, actually. And, it's not going to go away until we surrender to it and work with it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's, the analogy of, the suffering that we experience. It's like, it's we're outgrowing our heart. It's like this big, and when it breaks open, it's like it's just getting bigger. It needs a bigger container, for the new level of, ability for us to hold this love and this awareness, and then crack some more because there's more love that's being sent and more understanding, and it's like it's just like, I think in the cards, like tarot cards, there's the tower, everything gets crumbled and destroyed, and then things get rebuilt,
Right. And, two things come to mind. One is the cartoon from The Grinch Who Stole Christmas, where at the very end, his heart grows so big because he realized the meaning of giving to others, and it breaks the little tiny heart he had, breaks the container or the cage that it was in, and it, it shines outside of his body. He becomes radiant. And so I just, that practice of remembrance is so exceptional, just to come home to ourselves each day, preferably, but certainly each week. I do want to talk about the other modalities. When did you offer, because you offer this amazing array of modalities, when did you start to integrate I mean,
Yeah.
which was the first one, the LED light therapy or the light codes,
Okay.
the emotion
Well,
and body codes?
yeah. So, the lights in my eye. So the Sufi healing, is um, sort of my foundation, and that's where I usually end up, becomes part of the healing no matter what I do with people. Like, they might come to me. I mean, people, I truly believe that, people, whoever needs to come to me shows up at my door. Like, I don't advertise, I don't like call anybody, like people are sent. And, they're the ones if they need me, they find me. And that I always find that, no matter what kind of work I used to do, like whether I was doing the jewelry work, whether I was doing I used to design flowers, like
Right.
weddings.
Beautiful flowers.
And, I would, there would be healings happening in those levels too. And, I can't remember, whether it's Sufi healings or not, but it's all really connected. It's all, one like and, so typically, I get guidance. I know I ask for guidance, like, okay, what do I need, to help this person? And so, one of so the Sufi work helps me connect so I can bring in, hear the guidance, bring in the guidance, and also any kind of, in any particular, I'll get insight about like, what to work on with somebody. But so things like if someone has like they can come with anxiety and depression, they can come with addiction, they can come with, some, cancer, they can come with whatever, toxic poisoning, whatever they are coming with. I'll use as guided. And I learned during COVID, I learned how to a modality called the body code, which is combined with the motion code. And you learn that first, and you learn the body code. And I have found that really, and I got guidance from from God to like study this, do this now, because it was a perfect time to study. Because during COVID, we're all in lockdown, and for a while we weren't doing, I wasn't taking care of my grandbaby at that time, so I had a lot more time and doing whatever, and I had wanted to learn the emotion code a while back, but I just didn't have time. But I find it, again, the person who created it got guidance from God too, to how to muscle test, use kinesiology, muscle test to find out where in the body there's trapped emotion and imbalance, toxins, things that may be inherited from ancestors, many, many generations back, some kind of trauma that might be trapped in the body. It could be some environmental toxin. It could be a mold or a parasite. It's a very fascinating system. So, I'll use, and that system too, that, you have to ask, higher power, God, Allah, whatever your name that helps meaning for you, to connect to this person and find out like, what is it that is needed? So that be, to release whatever is, blocking their wholeness and health and
well-being. Right.
And it's very fascinating. I've worked with people's pets, to like human beings, where even where like recently, someone in their 70s, they had like a huge variety of very like different illnesses, different parts of their body. And I think in the second session we had, we had done whatever, and we didn't even ask for, they were feeling better. We didn't even ask for healing or understanding of what was happening in the heart, but it automatically was started, doing some healing in there. And the doctor had told my client that, oh, your heartbeat, which for 40 years has been irregular, now is normal.
Wow. Wow.
We just do these things, but we weren't even focusing on the heart, but the body, because the body knows what it needs. It came up, but it wasn't like this. The client didn't say, "I want to focus here."
Exactly.
We were focusing here, but it was related to something else that was happening in the whole. So the body knows everything, and and God knows everything too. So it's like between those things, and then you clear out the body. And a lot of the Sufi healing prayers is, releasing and clearing to bring in the goodness, the healing, the wholeness, sometimes, the peace, the love, whatever a person is needing, I'll get guidance like after that part to do the certain types of prayers for this person. And typically, even if people have never done it before, I would say, I think only once someone said they weren't interested in hearing any prayers. They were just good with, whatever we were doing. I think it was like the red light. And I was like, okay, that's fine. But most people, even if they've never experienced it, they go, yeah, sure, let me listen to it. Why not? And it's always, people have told me, they've never, never heard these things before. They felt impact. They felt it was helpful. They felt that it made a difference.
Yeah.
And even if they weren't sure, what had happened. So yeah, it's and so
so you're guided to use these different modalities so you begin with the Sufi prayers in your session, and then you integrate intuitively either the flower essences or the emotion body codes, or I don't think you're working with the LED light therapy right now because of COVID, but when you were,
there's
were, people could, I used to book a session with you for the LED light therapy, which I have to say is an amazing tool in and of itself, but you took it to a next level because you were adding the Sufi prayers while I was under the LED light therapy, which, by the way, I think you told me that, or Jocelyn, the person that you were working with initially, told me that Olympic athletes and pro sports athletes use these LED light therapies before.
Yeah, the red light.
Yeah. So is it LED or is it just
it's red? Well, it's called red light therapy. I think it's a type of LED light, but it's red light.
Okay.
It's called red light therapy. Yeah.
Okay.
It's I use tapping, emotional freedom technique with. And that's a great tool for anyone to learn. And when I tend to test and see if it works and combine things because it seems to always do something on another level. So I'll often teach people how to do that. Tapping is so easy and you can learn it online. You don't have, but I will encourage people to use that. Sometimes we do it during a session, but often once they learn it, just to do it regularly. Flower essences are something that I'll mix for somebody. There's a questionnaire that they ask to fill out, and then I sort of pray pray over the mixture once I make it. And then the body code, emotion code is, we do, I do it remotely on proxy, but so that means I'm doing it on myself for, ask their permission. I'm connecting to their soul and I'm muscle testing, and I'll feel and I'll ask, is it this or this? And I get, through the muscle testing, I'm told where to go. And, it's very fascinating because it's, somebody who I think he was in his 50s who had he broke his nose when he was young, and he had multiple surgeries to reopen the septum because it was crushed
in his sinuses.
In his sinuses, but it kept closing. And recently I did a session on that, and he said, I can breathe. And he was so happy. He was also having a bunch of other things happening where he just lost, both his parents. He was going through grief, and there was things that are causing stress in his being. So it's not like So it was, we were working on those things. And he said, I'm having a hard time breathing. I always have had, sometimes it's worse, but it's been bothering me. So can we work on that? I was like, yeah, sure. And that was great. And another person who's like in their 20s was having, really good health in their 20s. And they said, I'm having this weird back and, shoulder and neck pain. I don't know what it is. I've tried everything and it's not working. So again, we did, the body code, and I did some, both of them. I did like body code and then some of the Sufi healing. And, right after the treatment, so, oh yeah, I feel much more relaxed. So I don't know if I feel relaxed or because I've been lying down, I feel more relaxed.
Mm-hmm.
But each day, he said, I feel, less and less, it's better and better each day.
Right.
So definitely, these things that you can't explain, or it seems like they're not explainable because they're like, the other person who's in their 50s been getting treatment for years and surgeries, and they couldn't explain why I kept on closing, on him.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, now you're singing my song because I think many of us have been schooled in the Western allopathic medicine modalities, that's the only way. And if there's any takeaway, it's the combination of both Western and Eastern.
Yeah, absolutely.
That hopefully someday, I mean, some facets of modern medicine are beginning to include integrative therapies. They're called integrative medicine. But for the large part, it's sort of an either or. You either are doing traditional allopathic Western medicine or you're doing all Eastern alternative medicine. And to me, it's not. And I think to many of us in the alternative practices, it's not a either or, it's a both and.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. That's why I feel like, I was guided to do the body code work because it's more, most people feel, they're not exposed to energy or spiritual healing work. They're more reluctant to do it. But when I tell them I do this kind of thing, they go, it seems more either familiar or safe to them. And so, and it works, so it's nice that, I've added that. But again, most people who come to me or get sent to me either, sometimes I get very unusual cases. And then a friend of mine once,
I was going to say, what's the strangest or most peculiar or off track case that you've
the most
had?
unusual I've ever had, let's see, was an iguana. I did a body code healing on an iguana.
Wow.
So this person said that their iguana was not eating, and they asked if I could do a healing on the iguana. And so I did, and we learned that the iguana had felt abandoned by its previous owner. And so that's why it was angry and it was upset. So it was actually not why I was not eating. And so we cleared, and it was, I had just started doing the test, the emotion code, body code. And so it was very unusual. I was like testing. It's like, well, the lizard's angry at a male. Does this mean anything to you? And they said, oh, the previous owner was a male. And so we cleared it. And the next day, the client said that, oh, when I woke up, I looked at my lizard and there was this white halo around the lizard's head. Wow. And I've never seen that around the lizard. And then a couple of days later, the lizard started eating. So, she was really happy. And then the best thing was the lizard met a girl lizard and they're happily ever after. So
that's adorable.
Yeah, it was really cool. Cute story. But I've worked on dogs and, rescues who have a lot of trauma.
Any unusual story, any cases with humans?
Oh yeah, definitely a lot more with humans. So the humans, let's see. I have a lot of, so I'm trying to think.
I know often autoimmune cases can be very tough to for
Yeah,
allopathic medicine.
there's definitely, um, I had some cases where people had like some, they didn't really know exactly why they were sick. They were just, some of it was, you know, some things are like one person had problems with their throat. They couldn't speak. Not they, I mean, they could speak, but they were having trouble with their throat, and they were told not to. They had to rest their voice and not speak, and but it was related to a lot of different things. It wasn't just like yes, they were exposed to like smoke and because all these like wildfires in their neighborhood and stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
but there was a lot of other things that need to be released, like things, generational things, some things that traumas that they experienced and that they were holding in their body. So as we cleared the layers, the person was able to the pain in the throat started diminished,
Mm-hmm.
significantly, and they could speak longer and longer for longer periods of time. And someone who had chemical poisoning from chemicals had all like lost their hair and
Wow.
couldn't sleep, and was had a lot of trauma and anxiety, and just doing the couple, even one session, they felt much more relaxed, and then eventually their hair grew back, and they started
Wow.
definitely feeling more connected to a higher power, which that was the biggest thing for that person, is that she already had a connection, but she wasn't remembering to go
Right.
there, and so this
Therein
opened that
comes the
door. Yeah,
remembrance again.
yeah, exactly. And that's usually what happens with, all cases. It's like, it connects people again back to that place, whether, I've worked with some teenagers, with depression and anxiety because they were being bullied at school, and they were just feeling overwhelmed. And again, it's like once they connected back to that source, that was, they felt better, that, things
Mm-hmm.
changed, and
So,
relationships too. Yeah.
so now is most of your work
Mhm.
post, we're in hopefully the post COVID, but I mean, it's now largely remote. So if somebody wanted to work with you, they would contact you at your email
Mhm.
or your phone number, which
Yeah.
I'll give out again.
Yeah.
But your work is you're doing your sessions via Zoom or telephone. Is that correct?
Yes, I need to do that for a while because I'm babysitting my granddaughter who's 21 months. And I've been asked by the parents to
Yeah,
not
no,
see anything. So
understandably.
yeah, yeah. So I'm doing everything. And, I've been doing that since COVID, and I did that a lot before COVID. So
Right.
I can't do the red light treatment right now because although it's still being, I use it on myself, and I lent it to my son and his fiance because she got a really bad concussion, and
Wow.
so it's actually helping her.
Good.
So, and also he does he was a mixed martial arts competitor before, and now he's retired, but he does training and he teaches private lessons, and he hurt his back recently, so it's been helping him. But
Mm-hmm.
the that's also been, there was a case where I had a woman with a very severe head trauma, and it was, the light treatments with the prayers, like, she came to me when she was really, really like a lot of problems, a lot of pain. She couldn't drive. She was like getting, having anger, like episodes, and
Mm-hmm.
the headache, and she was having a lot of problems. And she came to me because she was like so desperate. And even with
Mm-hmm.
just one treatment, she felt like so much better. But with more treatments, she just like got better and better and was able to, drive, able to do certain things. And so that was, yeah, it's good for so many things.
Okay, but I just want to emphasize that if anybody, whether they're in Boston or whether they're in California or
Mhm.
in England,
Yep.
Canada, wherever you're listening, if
Yep.
they wanted to book a session with you,
Yep.
it's C as in Charles, M as in Mary, E as in Edward, ILEE. So Sime Lee at comcast.net to
Yes. Correct.
contact Carol Zara Lee. or 617-721-5215 to book a session remotely, either by phone or by Zoom. And again, I cannot endorse or recommend you any more than possible, because you just were so pivotal in my healing journey. And I can't believe that brings us to the end of our time together. But before I close, the last question I always ask all of my guests is, if you could change the world for better in some way, how would you change it?
Yeah, I would like to everyone to know that they are loved and they're never alone, and that, I hope the work that I do and I continue to do, helps people plant that seed in them in some way, so that it will it can keep growing, that love is the answer, and that helping each other, and hopefully I can continue, I try to model that, and just keep choosing love over anything else.
That is absolutely beautiful. Carol, I could talk to you for days and days and days. You're mighty force in this world. Thank you, Carol Zahra Lee, for joining me today. Wellness consultant and Sufi healer and practitioner of many modalities, healing and wellness modalities. Cmei Lee, CMEILEE at Comcast.net, or 617-721-5215 to book a remote session with her. Thank you so much for joining me today, Carol. That brings us to the end of this episode of Mystical Messages. Please join me again in 2 weeks, when I will be bringing you the astrology forecast for the upcoming month. Thank you so much, and I wish you all many blessings as you journey forward.